This is the story of Jesus Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God, kingdom builder, healer. He is the King of glory. He is the resurrecting Savior. They expected a conqueror, but instead they got a servant, crucified and lifted high. And the marks on his hands left us marked for salvation.
Well, we are in week 6 of the Revealed series, and we've been working our way through the Gospel of Mark, where we've just been taking some time to go through the different chapters and see how Jesus is revealed through the stories. And so we've been doing these little midweek talkback videos now for several weeks just to go along with the devotional and the weekend service. And this week I am joined by our trellis resident Maddie Bailey and by Pastor Keith. And we're going to be talking about what was going on in chapter 11, which was this weekend we talked about the story of Jesus' triumphal entry and his cleansing of the temple and how all of that was happening in that story and what was going on between people's expectations and the reality of who Jesus was. And we're going to kind of talk about another story that pops up. It's like spaced into the middle of that story where it happens before the cleansing of the temple and after the cleansing of the temple. But I want to kind of start by asking you guys a question. Are there ever times that you're reading through the Bible and you come across a story and you just don't know what to do with it?
Yeah, the parable of the rich fool kind of gets me a little bit. It's not necessarily confusing in its content, but it's very countercultural. You know, we are taught pretty early on to save up and then you can take life easy. And this talks about how you shouldn't do that. And it almost like makes me pause. And it's like, you know, like,
yeah,
that's interesting. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the Bible's countercultural, so you know.
Yeah, it's that it goes against some of the things that we're taught about saving and planning for retirement and all these ideas that we have, but it's this story that reminds us about what it means to trust in God. And so I can understand why there are times that you look at it and be like, well, that's not what I hear.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I went a little bit more young boy style. Stories, you know, when I was younger, or you hear and it's like, wow, why is that in there? Of Elisha being called Baldy.
Yeah.
And calls on a bunch of bears to maul some children. And kind of like, why? What does that have to do with things?
It is a story that I have often wondered, how do you teach that or preach that?
Yeah. So I went more of the immature boy that I am. So.
Yeah, I think there's different times in the Bible that, if we're honest, there's stories that we read that we just scratch our heads sometimes and we're like, we don't really know how to take it.
Yeah.
The story that we're looking at this week is one of those stories. It's found in Mark chapter 11, and it's in verses 12 through 14 and then 20 through 25, and I'm going to read the story real quick. It said, the next morning as they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry, and he noticed a fig tree in full leaf a little way off, so he went over to see if he could find any figs. But there were only leaves because it was too early in the season for fruit. Then Jesus said to the tree, may no one ever eat from your fruit again. And the disciples heard him say it. Now we skip down a few verses to verse 20, and it says, the next morning as they passed by the fig tree he had cursed, the disciples noticed that it had withered from the roots up. Peter remembered that Jesus had said the tree, or what he had said to the tree on the previous day, and he said, look, Rabbi, the fig tree you cursed had withered and died. Then Jesus said to his disciples, have faith in God. I tell you the truth. You can say to this mountain, may you be lifted up and thrown into the sea, and it will happen. But you must really believe it will happen and have no doubt in your heart. I tell you, you can pray anything, and if you believe that you've received it, it will be yours. But when you are praying, first forgive anyone who is holding a grudge against you, so that your Father in heaven will forgive your sins too. Now, as we go through that story, is there anything that really just kind of jumped off the page to you?
For me, it was, as I was reading it, and when they're walking and Jesus sees there's no fruit on the tree, and curses it, but it said, but there were only leaves because it was too early in the season for fruit. So it kind of, I mean, it jumped off like, it seems kind of harsh when you first read it.
Yeah. It's one of those stories, and I think it's like that first part that you just, that's one of those parts where I scratch my head because I'm not really sure what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to move with that, you know.
Because to me, it says it's too early for fruit. So you just think fruit would not be on it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of people think that story is very funny. I do too.
I've seen quite a few memes and like
Right.
Instagram reels about it. Yes.
Yeah, a lot of people are like, okay, Jesus. Like, they think that that's really, really funny.
You know, sometimes you wonder, was he just hangry and he got
Right.
mad, or you know? But go on.
But you know, again, it's that looking at it deeper.
Mm-hmm.
In between these two sections, we get the cleansing of the temple,
Mm.
and you know, I see it as like there's leaves on the tree. There was activity in the temple. There is no fruit being produced.
Mm.
There was nothing good happening. There was nothing like. Yeah, I guess that goes into the next thing, but that's kind of what does like makes me stop and say like, okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah. And when you actually take the time to look, you understand the reason why this story was included is that very reason. Is that depiction of the Pharisees in the temple and these people that on the outside looked like they had it all together, like they were flourishing.
Yeah, like the tree.
But there was no fruit.
Right.
And we're called to produce fruit.
Yeah.
A fruit tree that doesn't produce fruit is worthless.
Right.
You know, and so that's a great way of looking at how that ties into the larger story in chapter 11.
Mm-hmm.
So, any other thoughts or?
Verse 24 gets me sometimes.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because I think sometimes we can read that and then we go back and what happens when we don't get what we're praying for.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is it, do I don't have faith? Is it I'm not, you know, we start struggling in our
Or
minds.
sometimes are our motives not lined up with God.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, it goes back and forth with that.
Yes, because I've heard a lot of that, you know, that believe it and receive it idea, and it can be difficult.
Oh yeah,
because there's people that teach that idea that all you have to do is claim it, name it, and claim it, and it's yours, and but the whole point of prayer is that we're aligned with God.
Yeah.
That it's a conversation, and so we're not going to pray for something that's not in the will of God.
Right.
yeah.
But to know that He is faithful to answer our prayers, you know, it's an interesting way that He kind of moved out of the cursing of the fig tree to reminding the disciples that they have this connection with God as well.
Yes.
That through faith and through prayer and through this relationship that they have with the Father, they can do incredible things too. They can see God's hand move in ways that the rest of the world will step back and say, I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So yeah, we kind of talked about how the story connects with the cleansing of the temple, because you had brought that up, that it's this bigger picture. You know, remember, the whole book of Mark is the fact that Jesus is being revealed, that His identity is being shown, and it's connected. I think this story is interesting because it's connected with this triumphal entry, where the people are celebrating Him as the Messiah. But then just a couple verses later, they don't get it.
Yeah.
Because then when He curses a fig tree and it actually withers, they're like, we didn't expect that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting when you look at the story and the connections that exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So He ends specifically, like you talked about, Keith, He ends specifically about talking about faith. So I just want us to think, like, personally, as we try to take this story from chapter 11 and impact our lives, where are places that you have actually seen answers to prayer? And how do we stay committed to asking in prayer, even when it seems like the answer's taking a while?
First one I could think of is one that Angie shared a couple of weeks ago when she
Mm.
preached of our son Josh, who was, before he was born,
Mhm.
the doctors were saying, his stomach wasn't developing, his other parts were not developing adequately. We should terminate because he may not live.
Mhm.
Mm.
And we had prayed and had a lot of people praying. And the day before we were supposed to have a C-section, when they did the last test, everything was normal.
Mm.
And so to be able to see that
Yeah.
through prayer, and for doctors to see it,
Yeah.
because we can share with them, there's no other reason,
Yep. Yeah.
is the first one that came to my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you?
Someone that I know was diagnosed with a very severe case of cancer.
Mm.
She, we weren't sure exactly what was going to happen, but the doctors gave her like a set amount of years. Like, this is how much longer you have left. But that didn't stop them from asking for prayer from like everyone.
Yeah.
So they had this whole army of people praying for them. And then she goes in and they're like, it's a miracle. It's not gone, but you don't, like, it's in a remission. It's in like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like she was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that was huge, and that was something that like is never really seen.
Mhm.
And it was like these stories just remind us that faith can move mountains.
Yeah.
Right? So
They
it's,
can.
Yeah.
It's interesting because sometimes, I'll be honest, I'm not good at this part of stuff.
Mm.
I sometimes have like microwave Christianity where I pray and I expect an answer within 30 seconds.
Oh,
Like
right.
it's going to
Yeah.
be done. But I think, like, as I was reading this and I was thinking back, there's a story that comes to mind when I was a kid. There's something about the faith of a child, right? And my parents had been talking about wanting to do some camping with us. And we had a tent and everything, but they were like, we really would like to get a camper. And I remember every night they would come in and we would say prayers before bed. And every night I would pray, God, help our family to find a camper.
Mhm.
And my parents thought it was cute, but that was just what was in my
Right,
mind at
yeah.
that point. And it was so amazing when just a few weeks later, a neighbor, like 4 houses down from us, put a camper in the front yard for sale.
Yeah.
And it was exactly what we were looking for.
Yeah.
And we were able to not just look at it, but it was well within our price range. And, it was one of those moments that I remember as a kid, that moment of praying with just this faith that, well, God's going to answer this.
Mm-hmm.
And God actually providing it. And sometimes in my adult life,
Yeah.
I have to remind myself that He's still capable,
Yeah.
that He's still able to do those kind of things. And sometimes I need to let go of my adult faith
Yeah.
Mm.
and just have that childlike faith of just trusting in a good Father,
Yeah. Mhm.
So,
And sometimes it's not always answered the way that we
Yeah.
wanted it to
Yes.
be, but it's
No.
the way that we needed it.
Yeah.
He's always faithful to answer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just doesn't always happen the way we expect.
Right. And it's so much better.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good reminder.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I hope that you guys have been encouraged through this video talk and that you guys are working through the devotions and you can keep working through that revealed study guide, doing the chair time, doing the table talk, and just digging in deeper to the Gospel of Mark as we continue to see how Jesus is revealed.